gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Ken Dodd.
Later on in this podcast, I tell Lady Anne about the first time I met Ken at the Stage Door in Portsmouth. The second time I met Ken was in 1995 at the Blackpool Grand. I wrote to him to say I was working in the Tower. I got a letter back a few weeks later to say, "Come and visit me, young man. I will be here every Sunday throughout the summer." So I did. I popped in and told Anne that I was going to be visiting that night, and she said, "After the show, Steve, come and see Ken and I'll take you through." When I got there at the end of the show, just after midnight, Anne led me through to Ken's dressing room. He'd just left the stage. He was relaxing with a can of lager and I had a guest in the room. The guest eventually left and Ken said, "Sit down, son," and we chatted for an hour. He gave me advice after advice, asked me what I wanted from the business. He talked to me about my favourite ventriloquist. He talked about Arthur Worsley, who was still living around the corner at that time. We talked about Dennis Spicer, and we talked about me one day touring with Ken Dodd. And a few years later, that happened. So thank you, Sir Ken. It was worth the wait.
Hi folks, Ken Dodd here at this beautiful, beautiful theatre, the King's Theatre, South Sea. Isn't it absolutely wonderful? It's a great thrill to play here. It's a big thrill tonight to go to work with a brilliant and wonderful young man called Mr. Steve Hewlett. I think he's definitely, he's going to go far, and the sooner he starts, the better. Steve Hewlett, ladies and gentlemen, a great admirer of his, and he's got together this fabulous variety show tonight, a wonderful variety show, especially for you, and your entertainment. Thank you so much for supporting them. By Joe, yes, I hope it will be a touching, hilarious night. I hope you'll all be full of sumptuousness and completely discombobulated. And then, I say that in my church.
Welcome to the final episode of Eyes and Teeth the Specials. There are many books on Ken Dodd. I have just a few, including Michael Billington's How Tickled I Am, Louis Bath's Happiness and Tears, Gus Smith, Ken Dodd Laughter and Tears, Stephen Griffin's Ken Dodd the Biography, Ken Dodd's Diddy Men Annual 1974, and there's also a book by his fans called Absent Friends, a tribute to Sir Ken Dodd, compiled by Mark Bartram and edited by Lady Anne Dodd herself. And finally, my favourite, The Squire of Knotty Ash and His Lady, an intimate biography of Sir Ken Dodd by Tony Nicholson and Anne, Lady Dodd. It was said Ken didn't want any biography out there, but if there was to be someone trusted to this epic task, I have no doubt John Fisher would have been given the go-ahead by Ken. There is a stunning book by Ken, which is mainly a picture book of his life, and you can get this on the World Wide Web. It's worth owning, and it's called Ken Dodd, Look at It My Way. Whenever I spoke about Ken to an act, I heard many times, everyone should watch Ken at least once. He was a masterclass to study. It was more than a show. It was a museum of words, variety at its best. It's sad to think we can no longer say, go and see Ken before it's too late. The great thing is that both Audience With TV shows are some of Ken's best work, and it's out there to see anytime you like. You can just read what others say about Ken to gauge what admiration they had for him. He had a truly magical aura when he entered a room, and I've been there at the Water Rats Lodge, Buckingham Palace, his 90th birthday in London, or even at a stage door or dressing room. The whole atmosphere completely changes to that of excitement from everyone around him. This is Eric Sykes on Ken. Ken Dodd is a comedy genius who is so funny he should be available on the NHS. Eric pays a wonderful tribute to Doddy in his book Comedy Heroes. It's worth a look and includes Eric Sykes' other favourite comics such as Tommy Cooper, Laurel and Hardy, Spike Milligan, Hattie Jakes, Jimmy Edwards and many more. Roy Hudd said of Ken in his book, Cavalcade of Variety Acts, Ken's machine gun technique is totally different to the Max Miller I saw, yet there are similarities. Notably the outrageous suits and sprinkling of sentimental ballads. Ken, like Eddie Izzard, is one of the few modern performers to achieve fame without the hype of television. His notoriety for giving the customers value for money, regularly overrunning his allotted time on stage, is legendary. I remember the famous theatre director, Dickie Hurren, Being asked by a stage manager, "We've got Ken Dodd next week, can I have some timesheets?" to note down the running order of the show and time allocated to each act. The laid-back Haran answered, "You won't need a timesheet, you'll need a diary." Renowned TV producer and author John Fisher pays a lovely tribute to Ken in his stunning book, Funny Way to Be a Hero. This book also features Max Miller, Flanagan and Allen, George Formby, Tommy Trinder, Gracie Fields, Tony Hancock, Benny Hill, amongst others, and is an incredible account direct from someone who gave many of these names their breaks on television. Gary Barlow talked about this on Desert Island Discs on BBC Radio. "At the age of 14, Gary was playing the organ in a cabaret club." Sorry, I did that again. At the age of 14, Gary was playing the organ in a cabaret club. He found himself backing Ken Dodd. Famed for his marathon stage performances before the show, Ken would give Gary the cue line for his song, and then Gary would have to listen out for it, as Ken told joke after joke. "An hour goes by, and then another hour goes by, and you're poised waiting to start the song. He really did have our on our toes." Sorry. "An hour goes by and then another hour goes by, and then you're poised waiting to start the song. He really did have us on our toes." Gary Barlow of Take That. It was difficult to choose who to put in this last ever episode of Eyes and Teeth. There were so many friends, colleagues and support acts of Ken, but it has to end. And I have recorded new interviews along with reposting some past Eyes and Teeth guests who spoke very highly of Sir Ken. So today you will hear from comedian and TV booker Johnny Manns, support act and illusionist Danny Hunt of Amethyst. I'm proud to talk to John Fisher about his collaboration with Doddy over the years, as well as some truly special moments he shared with other stars, including his involvement in giving Billy Connolly his moment with this routine on Parkinson back in the day.
"I hope I can get away with this. It's a beauty." He said, "How's the wife?" He said, "Oh, she's dead." I said, "What?" He says, "Dead." "Do it again." "Dead. I murdered her." "I'll show you if you want." He said, "Ah, show me." So are we up to his tenement building, through the close, that's the entrance to the tenement. Sure enough, there's a big mound of earth. But there's a bum sticking out of it. He says, "Is that her?" He says, "Aye." He says, "What'd you leave a bum sticking out for?" He says, "I need somewhere to park my bike."
And alongside some live clips and interviews on TV, you will hear from Lady Anne Dodd about her time touring and sharing her tributes she is spending most of her time on keeping Ken's legacy alive. Let's get started and welcome to the show funny man and popular talking head on many guest TV shows, Johnny Manns. Eyes and Teeth. There's a lot of rats, you know, that you would have bumped into over the years.
It's just a coincidence that a lot of artists that I've worked with were either rats before me or they were rats at the same time as me. And it's been a pleasure to work with some of these major stars.
Yeah, that's incredible. And who proposed you into the order, Johnny?
Well, years ago, what's funny, Derek Roy wanted to put me in, and this is like going back 50 years ago. And Derek Roy was an old music hall comedian, but sadly he passed away. And then years later, Charlie Smithers and Frankie Vaughan wanted to put me in, and I kept sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what was happening. And apparently, because Frankie Vaughan hadn't been to Lodge for such a long time, he couldn't put me up for it.
Okay.
Yes. So eventually it was Keith Simmons and Peter Elliott who put me into the Rats, which was lovely, you know, and I was very proud. I went in, I think it's about 27, 28 years ago now. But I mean, it could have been about 50-odd years had Derek Roy not passed away.
Yeah, that's sad, that whole situation. But similar situation with Ken Dodd. So Ken Dodd was proposed into the Rats, but he couldn't get into Lodge for 50 years. And then he was proposed 50 years later. How funny is that? That's a bit of a cue, isn't it?
Yeah, it was funny because, I mean, he would have been a rat with his emblem years and years ago. And then I think he probably thought it was just a boozy crowd of boys that got together. And
well, it is.
Well, yes, I suppose it is. But I think that was That was his idea of the water rats. He didn't think it was so organised and so prestigious, and the traditions that go along with the water rats. I don't think he saw that until he actually came to Lodge and got initiated properly into the order. But Doddy and I go back many, many years when he had his television series. And he had people like, my best mate was a comic called Charlie Lee from Liverpool.
Oh, yes.
Charlie was on the show. Phil Fazzacali, who was, he was a Liverpool entertainer. And Barbara Knox was on it. You know Barbara, who plays Rita in Coronation Street.
She's still going strong.
Barbara was on it.
Yeah.
And, I mean, she's a lovely girl as well. She, the last time I saw Barbara, we had lunch at the V&A Hotel up in Manchester, just outside of the old Granada studios, and she bought me a lovely dressing gown. And I've got a super letter from Barbara saying, you know, I hope it lasts for years and years. But Doddy, I mean, I used to tour Doddy as well. And what also made me laugh, a couple of things. One is on his TV shows, I'd never seen it before, but Doddy quite often used a lot of cue cards.
Oh,
and I never realised that. But I was lucky enough also to be invited to his This Is Your Life recording. That was down at the theatre in London. That was a super... We all went into the green room after having a drink, and Doddy stayed by the door at the back. And he was there for ages, just sort of chatting to people. And I went along once, and I said, Doddy, why don't you come into the room? You know, everybody's down to see you. And I don't think he realised at the time it was a free bar. But he eventually came in, we chatted, and Danny LaRue was there, and lots of other big celebrities.
That This Is Your Life show was brilliant, wasn't it? Because he actually put on a performance. I think he's the only performer on This Is Your Life that was asked to do it, that actually put on a show. The Diddy men were there, he did the Happiness. It was almost like an audience with, not This Is Your Life.
Listen, you give Doddy the opportunity to perform, that was it, you couldn't get him off.
Yeah.
And in the shows we did, I remember at Hastings, after one night of Doddy, he did two shows. I was staying at the hotel up the road, and he was doing two shows, 6:15 and 8:45. And me and Becky and I had the kids with me. We went down to go to see the second show. There was a great big queue outside the White Rock Theatre. And I thought, what are these people doing here? You know. And apparently he was still on the first house. He just went on and on and on. And it was about an hour later before we could get the second audience in. That was funny. Loading his car, he used to have so many props that he had a station wagon, one of these estate cars.
Yes.
And he used to sort of try and get all the stuff in the back and use his foot to push it in before he could close the door. Great guy, though. A great guy, Doddy. And I've got some lovely letters from him. And he was a true friend. And I think he was honoured to be in the Grand Order of Water Rats. Yes,
I think he was very happy in the end. And I think, obviously, one of the all-time greatest comics we've ever had. He's...
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks to Johnny for his memories. Let's enjoy a few moments of Doddy.
When I'm picking the beetroot steer, that's when my heart beats for you. When I'm picking those blueberries, that's when I feel blue for you. But when I'm picking those pickled onions, that's the only time I cry for you. But when banana skins are falling, I'll come sliding back to you. Yes, when banana skins are falling, I'll come sliding back to you. All right, ladies, By Jove, I needed that. It's better out and in. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say, Mrs. How tickled I am, Miss. How tickled I am by all this goodwill. Have you ever been tickled by goodwill, Mrs.? Hello, good old Willie.
Is Ken Dodd your real name?
No, it's an anagram.
An anagram.
It's a joke.
It's a joke, is it? No, I see. What is the anagram?
Dencod.
Dencod. And you are from... No, clear this up. Is Knotty Ash mythical or real?
Oh, no, Knotty Ash is a real place. A lot of people think it is a fig leaf from my imagination, but no, it's a real place. It's Knotty Ash, a little village about 4.5 miles east of Liverpool, and it's there, all right, and we have, that's where we have all the Knotty Ash industries, you know, the snuff quarries and the broken biscuit repair works, and the gravy wells, where we export Knotty Ash gravy all over the world in our fleet of gravy boats. What's our rehearsal?
Have you got your right teeth in?
Yes, oh, this is the one, yeah. Central eating.
But listen, were they always there? These, I mean, you were born in Knotty Ash, weren't you?
Yes.
And raised there?
Yes.
And all these industries were there when you were a child, I assume?
Yes. We had them all there, the Jambutty mines and the treacle wells. And, oh, yes, all there. As a matter of fact, we have our own motorway sign now on the M62, this lovely big Knotty Ash. A lot of people can't believe it. I can't believe it.
But what kind of childhood did you have, Ken, there?
Very happy.
Was it?
Yes, very, very happy. I think I had the best mum and dad in the world, and a brother and a sister. It was 3 of us, one of each. And mum and dad, I had a little bitty man daddy and a little mini mum. And they all, between them, my family life, and Knotty Ash, I think I owe it all to there. I started entertaining in Knotty Ash.
But I mean, was there a lot of laughter in the family?
Ah, yes. A lot of people often say, who's your favourite comic? Who's the comedian you model? Well, it's my dad.
Really?
Definitely. He was the funniest man I ever knew. Very, very funny man. Every sort of Sunday afternoon when we'd had, you know, having your tea, have pineapple chunks. Chunks and carnation. After that, my dad always used to do impressions for us and sing us songs like An Egg and Some Nam and an Onion and all his great favourites were, Will Hay, Jack Pleasance.
What about school? Were you a funny lad at school? Were you different?
Yes. A bit difficult, this, you know. See, on one hand, I'm trying to answer you with a sensible remark, and the other hand, the brain, the computer, it takes over, and you're trying to think of the funny ones. Yes, I went to, I was teacher's pet. I used to sit in the cage at the back of the classroom. I went to a mixed school. We wouldn't drink anything else. I went to Knotty Ash school. No, I don't think so. I was quite... When I was 3, I could read, and I used to read all these, The Wizard and the Hotspur and the Rover, and that's how it all started. One day in The Wizard, I read this advertisement. It said, "Fool your teachers, amaze your friends, send 6pence in stamps." So I did, and I got this book on how to become a ventriloquist, didn't I? Yeah, you'll tell. And also, this little bird warbler you put in your mouth, you go... And months later, through going in the woods lot and lying in the long grass, I became an ornithologist. People say it affects your eyesight, but it never has with me.
But you went to... Your first job, in fact, wasn't in show business, was it? I mean, you were on the knock on the door, weren't you?
I worked with my father in a coal business with my brother. And then I was on the knocker, as you say, going round selling, pots and pans and tickling sticks. And I think that's where the missus bit started. All my life, I've always sold things and served, tried to serve being of service to the public. I still am, I suppose. Whereas at one time I used to have a bucket and pan round. Now I have a tickle round.
A laughter round.
Aye.
Yeah. But what about when you started making people laugh professionally? What kind of places did you work?
You can't make people laugh. You can only give people a laugh. Laughter is inside you see. Everybody's got laughter inside them, and as a comic, all you do is just touch the spring of laughter. Everybody is born, as a baby, you're all born with a chuckle muscle. It's worked its way up past your clack and out through your tittle. It's very like an attack of wind. As a baby, you're born with a chuckle muscle, and if you don't use it, you must use your chuckle muscle every day and have a laugh. You're doing great. Yours is doing great. If you don't, it will wither and drop off.
Welcome back to Eyes and Teeth from an earlier episode Hilary O'Neill to talk about her moments with Sir Ken Dodd.
The Ken Dodd thing. So I was offered a summer season, Blackpool Opera House, 1981, and I did the whole season, 12 dancers. We were all from Lane Theatre Arts in Epsom.
Okay, wow.
So we all trained. Actually, no, I think a couple of the girls weren't. Yeah, a couple of the girls weren't, but we were mostly Lane Theatre Arts, and it was just incredible. 6:10 and 8:40 every night. Sold out, just under 3,000, the Opera House, isn't it? I think, seating.
It's huge, yeah.
And every single performance was rammed.
Wow.
You know, you never looked out and went, thin house, you know, it was just... And that was for 18 weeks, I think, every single night.
You're
twice
kidding
nightly,
me.
I think.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So you must have had digs up there because you said you were from Surrey, Epsom. So what? All those girls went up to Blackpool for the season to do that.
Do you know what? I'm just trying to think where I lived. I can't even think for a second. I'll come back to that. I must have had digs because how extraordinary. I've gone absolutely blank on what was I then? I don't even mind people knowing my age, it's fine. So I was 20. I must have stayed with a couple of the other girls. I have to. Yes, of course I did. It's all coming back. I stayed with 2 other girls in a house. Right, I've got it. I know exactly where it is. And it was an incredible season, lots of laughs. Ken would arrive so late. We would be on stage in our opening yellow feathers and bikinis with all 12 of us ready to come down these incredible stairs through revolving doors. And the overture was probably about a minute, if that, of the orchestra. And then our routine was probably about 2 minutes, if that. And then there was the da-da-da-da-da-da, you know,
the signature, yeah.
And Ken was pushed on, he's going to date me, in a mini metro, which was the car of the time.
No way.
And every day, when I'm stood at the back, I was the last of the sets of 4 girls to go through the doors. So we went through in 3 sets of 4. And Ken would pass me from the door of the Winter Gardens across my back behind me, and I'd go, "Hi, Ken. Hello, Hills." He would go up in the lift. The lift was always held for him. He would go up in the lift. He had to go up there, undress, dress, do his hair. I know that sounds crazy, but do his hair, put the little red dots and the makeup on, the red dots in the eyes, go back down underneath the stage, past the stage underneath to go round the other side of the stage to come up to get in the car to be pushed on. So I'm telling you all that because of the timing.
Wow.
So you're talking, the overture has started and he'd walk past me and I go, every day I go, he's not going to make it. He won't be there. He won't be there. And I spend the whole number going, he won't be there tonight. Fiver says he won't be there. He won't be there. No way will he be there. And it wasn't until it went da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and we'd all step backwards in time with our arm to the right to welcome him on. He never missed it.
True pro.
I was so...
Wow.
Oh, just unbelievable. Oh my God, they were happy days. But often we would be sent home, no finale. There's a surprise.
Oh, that's no. Who wants a finale at 1:30 a.m. Eh?
Well, I did stay one day for the midnight matinee we were involved in, and there was lots of Blackpool acts on. In fairness, it was an overcrowded show.
Surely Ken Dodd didn't do a midnight matinee, did he? No, he started at midnight. Seriously.
Right. So we started just before midnight, and Ken went on. I can't remember what time he went on, but I stayed to the end. The band put their clothes on and left him during his act. They actually got up and left, and you could see them all stand just in the pit getting anoraks on and stuff. His drummer and his keyboard player stayed, and the rest of the orchestra that we had for the summer show, they all went. They'd just gone, I've had enough. And I was in the wings watching him until he finished at 5:15 in the morning.
No, he'd done a full show. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, he did a full show. But you see, what happened was that acts really overran. There was acts, I won't mention any names, but I could, but I won't. They were down for 15 minutes and did 45. Well, if everybody does that, you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
just like...
I put shows on like that, yeah.
But that was a happy dancing show. My best friend and I became best friends during that show, and we're still best friends now. Yeah, and Ken and I were the last people to leave my 21st birthday party. Him and his Lady Anne, now his wife. The 3 of us left at my party together. It was lovely.
So what happened on your 21st? I remember being in Cyprus on my 21st, and I just joined a team out in Cyprus to run the entertainment in a hotel. And but you trained in one hotel, and then we all went out to entertain for the whole season in '96 to do your own thing. And I was a vent, so I'd do my show once a week. But I remember my 21st birthday party because they give me this biggest cocktail I've ever had, and I drunked the lot. Yeah, I drunked the lot. And I remember being sick just across the road from the club, on the side of the road. But I went back there with Nina. I went back to the same spot, the same club, and I looked. I said to Nina, "This is where I was sick on my 21st birthday." And there was this beautiful little tree in the place of where I'd hurled, and I think I grew that myself.
All the nutrition and the ecological wishes of your heart went into your sick.
Yeah, literally. I mean, if that tree had little carrots grown on it, I would have thought, that's mine, you know?
So lovely.
Isn't that beautiful? Romantic.
It is romantic. I thought you were actually going to say, and we went back, I took Nina back there to show her, and they put a blue plaque there. I thought you were going to say. That's what I was waiting for.
No.
So Doddy and I, so that's when I first worked with him, and then a smattering of gigs with Doddy through the years. But then after Blackpool, the very prestigious Palladium, 2 weeks at the London Palladium in the Ken Dodd show.
Oh, wow.
And that was just insane. And I was old enough to appreciate it.
Yeah, well, you were dancing. You were still dancing then, Hills?
I was still dancing, yeah. That was I think it was a few months later, a few weeks later. It was the sort of same band of girls with a couple of extras. I think there were 14 of us then. And it was very memorable, really excited. So I actually first played the Palladium when I was 21.
Amazing.
And I've been so thrilled. I played it 7 times altogether. And it's just remarkable every time. You know, you go, oh come on, it's nuts, absolute nuts.
What a memory.
Beautiful.
I mean, Ken always had a ventriloquist on, or a variety act. Do you remember the acts that were there that season?
In that show, gosh, wait. So Rudy Cardenas, juggler, there was a seal act on. We had a guy with seals in the show. There was a bicycle act in the Blackpool show called Lily Yoko.
Yeah, she got it on with John Lennon, didn't she? I think that.
Yeah, they ended up together. It was great. Yeah, John came up and hung out in the wings and watched us. Yeah,
that's nice.
I'm just trying to think. A Bolyodorus act. You know the Bolyodorus. I'm doing it now, and it's not really helping your listeners at all. It's those Bolyodorus. The things that. Oh, how do you describe it? On string, hard balls. No, so wrong.
Hard balls on the string. Oh.
Hard balls on string that hit the floor with precision and syncopation, and it's like a percussion instrument, but highly dangerous and could bruise your shins if you get it wrong. And they were amazing. They were a family act, and they were like Mexican kind of. Oh, just beautiful. Can't remember who else.
Oh, amazing. It was a full variety show. I mean, even though Ken didn't need acts, he didn't need support acts, did he? Because he just added another hour to a 5-hour show. But what incredible memory there.
He loved variety. I'm not speaking for him. He just did. He championed variety. He loved talent, and he was terribly loyal as well.
Yeah.
He used that over and over, as you say, you know, friends of ours in the past, you know, that got loads and loads of stuff. Now, the lovely Simmons brothers, of course, they worked with Ken loads and loads of times. I worked with them once. I think we did a radio show together with Ken. Oh, gosh, so many memories. One of my favourite bumping intos with Ken was two stories. We organised a big variety party fairly recently. We called it the Encore event, and it was in Blackpool. And I had this notion, it was just about people getting together. We were all sort of seeing each other at funerals, and I said, this has got to stop. As in, why don't we just get together? Because why not? And why do we have to always meet on such a sad occasion and then see all the people you love and generally get on with?
Isn't it?
Anyway, out of that, it was actually after losing Bernie Nolan. That's what did it. My best friend, who I just mentioned, Natalie, who did Ken Dodd with me, we drove home and I said, can we not just try and organise an event? We did. We sold 450 tickets to the Viva Show Bar in Blackpool, and I asked Ken directly if he would be our special guest, and it was perfect timing because he was also his 60th year in the business.
Wow, amazing.
So we had Ken and Annie as our guests. I did a speech. All four of us that organised it, and we had some great people there, thanks to Nick Thomas, who got some real good names like Little and Large. Russ Abbott came, you know, the Crankies were there. Oh, just and on. It was just glorious. And I said, Ken, would you mind? I just looked at him on the front table. I said, would you mind coming up to say a few words? And of course, the audience laughed. Yeah.
A few.
And then he got up on stage. He just looked at me and he had the microphone. He said, Miss Hillary. He said, Miss Fix It. He said, you want me to say a few words? And of course, it brought the house down. But he actually, in fairness, did probably 8 minutes of beautiful, nostalgic chat about the theatres in Blackpool. And, I didn't realise quite how many there had been along that coast right the way along. So he did us proud. He was
Oh, amazing.
champion.
Oh, that's lovely. I remember the first time I worked for him, and Anne said, go and see Ken, your check is in the dressing room. She did say to me, before I went on, 25, 30 minutes, just do that. I went on, I'd done about 33, 35 minutes, and I came off, and Anne said, just stick to your time, just do your 25, 30 minutes. And I nearly broke my heart. And, oh, my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't realise I'd gone over. I went into the dressing room. Anne said, Ken's waiting to sign your check in the dressing room. So he sat there in his little vest, having a beer.
Yeah.
And then he's signing the check to me. How much was it? He always tried to get it a bit lower than what we'd agreed. But,
Like you'd forget your fee, yeah.
Yeah, but you'd do it for nothing, wouldn't you? Because it was Ken. But you need your petrol home, though. I really wanted to apologise to him for going over, and I said, Ken, I'm so sorry. It was my first night. I thought I'd never be back. I'm so sorry that I went over a little bit tonight. I'd done like 5 minutes too much. And he said, you're apologising to me, Ken Dodd, for going over. so it was a similar little story as what he told you. It was like
adorable.
Yeah, I'll never forget that first one.
Just one more. I mean, obviously, the whole interview isn't about Ken Dodd, I know, but I just have such reverence for the man. Just one more quick thing.
It's still going on, and he's not here.
Oh, I know. But I did a pantomime in Bradford a few years ago with Billy Pearce, and as I was leaving the stage door, I'm always first in, last out of the theatre. It's just the way I am. So, but taking my eyelashes off, etc. Anyway, I got to the stage door, and the stage door girl was just talking to a member of the crew in the doorway, and she said, "Oh, God, can you believe Ken's only just gone on?" And it was something like 10:15 or something at night. And I went, "Sorry, Barbara, what? Ken?" She said, "Yeah, Ken Dodd's over the road at the St George's Hall. I was at the Alhambra." And I went, "Ken's here tonight." He said, "Oh my God!" Well, I ran in thick snow in Uggs, not easy, and I ran like I've never run before. Ran in the stage door. They recognised. They said, "What are you doing here?" I went, "Oh, Ken, can you? Is Annie around? Could you get Annie?" Yeah, sure. So I rang Annie. Annie came down, took one look, I went, "Oh, Hills, come with me." She dragged me. She said, "Ken's only just gone on." This was his main spot. 10:15. The show had started at 7:30.
Wow.
I know. She got a chair. She put me in the wings, the front portal, and she said, "Stay there. I'll come and get you later." So I watched this genius, and of course, so much of it was known to me because of knowing he's got the set routines, and it brought a lump to my throat because of the Opera House Blackpool season and my memories and everything. He also did stuff that I'd never heard before. So brilliant, so new. He absolutely ripped the place apart. I cried, I laughed, and he stood him up. Obviously, the curtain shut, and he went on stage and said, "Ken, look who's here." And he looked over at me and he went, "Hills!" And he went, "Oh, come with me. And he took me down to the dressing room and he said, "Do you want a beer?" Now, I don't drink beer, but I'm not going to refuse a beer from Ken Dodd. So I said, "Yes, please." So we did the little wrinkle thing, and he put a beer in front of me, and we sat there for 2 hours.
Wow.
He didn't move from, like, my eye line. He made me feel like I was all that mattered. And Annie was lovely because she kept coming in and out. She was dealing with fans and things for him to sign and packing his suits and props away and stuff. And she just left us to chat. And the thing I treasure most about it, apart from him saying who he rated in the business and who he liked and who he didn't like, and, he loved, I was working with Billy Pearce at the time, and he absolutely adored Billy's energy and everything about him. And it was lovely to share that with him. He wanted to know about me. He wanted to know how, with me being away on the ships all the time, how that affects Alan, my boyfriend, and how he copes and how I cope, and my mum, and how's my mum, and how's Alan coping with work. And it was stuff that you wouldn't dream that he would even be really that bothered about, but that showed you how lovely the man was.
Yeah.
Total normal chat. We chatted showbiz, and we chatted, not showbiz.
Life. Yeah, normal. It just shows how normal he was as a human. He made us all feel welcome, and that the beauty of the man inside. He was just so good to us younger acts growing up, and he cared, didn't he? Care about the business so much, the people.
So desperately. Yeah, really cared about it. Anyways, he's in my heart, and I'm embarrassed to say that every day I stare at a bottle of champagne, hear me out, that's on the patio, hear me out again. He gave me a bottle of champagne for my 21st, which he signed to me on the label. And stupidly, because I was 21 and not the age I am now, it was put in an ottoman in our extension for years, because it's just where it ended up. And the label faded and got spoilt, and you can only just make out what he's written on it now. And it was just put on the patio the other day, actually. I just went, I can't throw this away, but what the hell am I going to do with it? It's just a bottle of, it'll be probably vile anyway, but it's because it was from him and because he signed the label, I just can't part with it. And it's all, you can't even read it.
I completely understand that, but you know it's there. You know what it means to you.
But it makes me smile and just think, oh, that's lovely. He bought me perfume, a bottle of champagne and something else. It was really nice.
Yeah, it means so much to so many people, but when he signed me that first check, I nearly kept the check and framed it, and I thought, no, I really need the money to get to the next Ken Dodd gig. So I photocopied it. I've got a photocopy check from Ken. Yeah, one of the first ones.
That's genius to think about that. What a clever thing to do. I remember a friend of mine, his dad used to write for, Paul Adams. Of course you know Paul Adams.
Yeah, love Paul, yeah. Brilliant.
Paul Adams. I know that there's a fantastic heirloom story where his dad, the very brilliant late Charlie Adams, fantastic scriptwriter, one of the best ever, wrote for Bob Hope. And Bob Hope sent a cheque to pay for Charlie, and he didn't bank it.
He didn't.
Because he couldn't not part with it. But actually what happened, he did bank it, and they gave him a copy of it. And then his mum, Paul's mum, framed it and gave it to Paul as a gift. And I just thought that was absolutely beautiful. I hope Paul won't mind me relaying the story, but what a gorgeous thing to do. It's just so heartwarming, those things, aren't they?
It's amazing. I love that. I really do love that. Welcome back to Eyes and Teeth to talk about his moments with Ken Dodd, Keith Simmons. Ken Dodd, you worked on his radio series with him.
Yeah, he phoned me one day and he said, I'd like you and Alan to do this radio series for Radio 2 I'm going to be doing. It's called Ken Dodd's Palace of Laughter. Would you come up to Manchester and read for the producer? I said, yeah, sure. So we drove up to Manchester and read a couple of bits and pieces, and he said, yeah, fine, you're signed for the series. And then Ken rang me again. He said, because we were both at the same office then, Dave Forrester was our agent.
Yes.
Who had been Ken's agent for years.
Big name, yeah.
And he said, don't tell Dave that you went up and did that read-through. And he said, don't tell him that I organised this. He said, so Dave will ring you in a couple of days and make out he's got this for you. So just accept it. So I was really choked. Dave Forrester rang me in his inimitable way and said, guess what I've got for you too? I said, I don't know, Dave. He said, I've got you a radio series with someone you're very close to. Who is that, Dave? Who is it? He said, it's with Ken Dodd. I said, oh, fantastic. And what was even worse, we had to pay him commission.
Oh, bless.
But, it's a series of 6 shows, and they're all done in little theatres in and around Liverpool, really. I mean, not too far from Liverpool, so we had to travel up all the time.
Yeah.
But we'd meet at Ken's house in Knotty Ash and then go on to these places and do read-throughs and then record the shows, and they were absolutely fantastic. I mean, we'd record about 2 hours of material for what finished up to be a 27-minute show.
Yeah, it sounds like Ken Dodd, yeah.
Yeah, but it included him doing a song as well in the show, so the actual comedy was really cut down, but we did some great little sketches with him. And Anne, or as she was then, Anne Jones, who became his wife, she was in them all. And we had some great guests. Dear old Peter Goodright, who we've recently lost.
Oh, yeah, just recently, yeah.
Yeah, he was a guest. He was on the first show, actually, because I remember we all went into, for some unknown reason, we all went into a McDonald's having guffaws of laughter in there before we recorded this show. And a guy came up to Peter Goodright and said, could I have your autograph, please? And totally missed Ken Dodd. Never said anything to Ken Dodd. He just wanted Peter's. But they were great times, and we had to do different voices characters and things on these sketches within the show.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be Ken touring round with this Palace of Laughter, and Alan would be the stage doorkeeper, and I'd be the dresser or something, and each show we played different characters, but it was great.
It's brilliant. It sounds
fun.
almost like an Educating Archie programme, you know, where you're all playing different characters and putting a little place together. I like that.
Yeah,
it's a nice
that's
concept.
Right. God, I remember as a kid when we used to have Sunday lunch or Sunday dinner, really, at lunchtime. We would have the radio on, listening to Educating Archie, and how great Eric Sykes used to write for that, and I got to do pantomime with Eric Sykes.
Oh,
he was one of the writers on Educating Archie.
Brilliant.
Just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, the history with Eric Sykes.
A ventriloquist becomes a huge success on radio.
I know.
Incredible.
I can't even get on telly these days. I'm going to have to go for radio, I think, Keith.
yeah.
Eyes and Teeth. The day after we lost Sir Ken, nearly every newspaper printed some of his best gags. Here were just some of them. 55 years in show business, ladies and gentlemen. That's a hell of a long time to wait for a laugh. My dad knew I was going to be a comedian. When I was a baby, he said, "Is this a joke? Did you hear about the shrimp that went into the prawn cocktails party? He pulled a muscle." So it turns out that if you bang two halves of a horse together, it doesn't make the sound of a coconut. Do I believe in safe sex? Of course I do. I have a handrail around the bed. I haven't spoken to my mother-in-law for 18 months. I don't like to interrupt her. The man who invented cat's eyes got the idea when he saw the eyes of a cat in his headlights. If the cat had been going the other way, he would have invented the pencil sharpener. I used to think I was marvellous in bed until I discovered that all my girlfriends suffered from asthma. My act is very educational. I heard a man leaving the other night saying, "Well, that taught me a lesson." Just read a book about Stockholm Syndrome. It started off badly, but by the end I really liked it. Age doesn't matter, unless you're a cheese. It's 10 years since I went out of my mind. I'd never go back. I won't part with my teeth. I'm the only patient who can sit in the dentist's waiting room and have his teeth checked at the surgery at the same time. There are 37 bones in the human neck, more if you're eating kippers. Oh, and here's a police message. With all those people who took the M5 motorway, please put it back because other people want to use it. How does a hen know the size of an egg cup when it lays an egg? Self-assessment? I invented that. The Romans built our roads. They're still working on the M6. I've seen a topless lady ventriloquist. Nobody has ever seen her lips move. Of course, there's hundreds and thousands of jokes I can just read out, but that was Ken Dodd, and he told them the best way, didn't he? It was all in the delivery. Welcome back to Eyes and Teeth. Ken Dodd's MD, Nigel Hogg.
The way I met Ken was that the summer season I did for John Redgrave in Scarborough was a split season. It was Mike and Bernie Winter's last summer season. They did the first half of the summer. Wow. Ken did the second half of the summer. And he brought his own musical director and drummer. But obviously I met him on the show and got to know him. Mm-hmm. Then I went away. I did Plymouth, did Jersey. When I came back from Jersey, I was back into doing social clubs. Right. I was doing a social club in Sheffield, which was a Sunday lunchtime and night. And I noticed that Ken was on in Sheffield that day, and I knew he'd obviously be there in the afternoon for a sound check and things. Yeah. So I thought I'll pop down the theatre and say hello and meet the band again, who I obviously I'd met before. So I went down and Ken said, leave me your phone number if I ever need a keyboard player. Can I give you a ring? And I said, yeah, that's fine. And this was in November. Barely a week or two later, I got a phone call from Ken Dodd. I said, oh, hi, Ken. He said, would you like to do a panto for me? I said, yeah, of course I would, because obviously I'd just come back from Jersey. The work was a bit thin on the ground. I was just doing social clubs. And I said, yeah, it's fine, Ken, I'd love to. He said, it's at the Alex in Birmingham, Alexander Theatre in Birmingham. Wow. I said, that's great. I said, when does it start? He said, tomorrow. So that was it. I was off down to Birmingham, and that was my first job with Ken. So then I was with Ken throughout, certainly the first half of the 80s. So I did several years with Ken as his MD.
You must have really got to know him.
He had a very old established musical director called Danny Walters.
Right.
Who was he worked for Delphonse and things, but he was just about to retire. So I took over then as Ken's MD and worked with him for several years, doing We did television series at the BBC.
Did you do the TV show? The BBC show?
The Ken Dodd's Showbiz.
Yeah.
And we did loads of Pebble Mills and Parkinson's and things. So it's a really good time for an
So you
MD
worked
to
on
be.
Parkinson.
Yeah.
One of my dream jobs. This is another dream job you've stolen from me.
Oh, sorry. I've got a video somewhere of me in a white jacket, sat at a grand piano in front of the Harry Stoneham band, which I really treasure. Doing Parkinson.
Well deserved. Amazing. Parkinson was a great show.
Oh, it was lovely, yeah.
And so the 80s really was, a big crescendo, I guess, for variety, some seasons and that. They started to go down really in the 90s.
They did, yeah.
70s and 80s were great for
there was
variety.
loads of work.
60s, yeah.
Loads of work. We'd be doing nightclubs for a week. We did, was it Blazers at Windsor?
Yeah, the cabaret venues.
Cabaret venues, Lakeside.
Windsor.
Savers.
Caesar's
Palace, we did that. Just do a week in each place, with Ken.
Ah, it's great days.
Days those, yes.
You must have really got to know Ken. Not just his act, but you got to know Ken.
Oh, yeah. We travelled about all
And the
over
banter.
place. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I felt that banter. I've worked with you and Ken.
Right.
And you both take the, I can bleep this next bit, beep out of me, Yeah, but we learn to get to know you quick like that because of your sense of humour, but you've got this dry sense of humour that I love, you're like an original Jack D to me.
Oh, that's one of my comedy heroes.
Well, I know why. Because he's nicked your act. That's why, Nigel. How did you rehearse that first show with Ken? Did you just turn up? You just read the band parts? And you didn't rehearse with Ken?
No. I mean, when the first, obviously the panto was all scored and everything, so that was just a normal, like a band gig. Then we went out on the road. In those days we had a bass player and a guitar as well, so a 4-piece band. The rest of the band obviously knew all the music, so they talked me through it and sort of guided me through for the first few shows, and then. But it was interesting.
Oh, conversational.
I've worked with you and Ken, and I've worked with you on some of his shows, but you sit there from the start, and it can be a 4.5 hour show, because you do back the acts as well. You've backed me on the show. How do you sit there for like 15, 20 minutes in between the sets and stay awake? It's so long, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I mean, I'm not being disrespectful, but it's such a long time to sit there and not being doing anything. And then you have to come out with a...
Oh, I know. Yes.
And then a little...
Just be careful not to miss a cue. And Ken did have a tendency, just because he could, I suppose, but he would suddenly burst into song, but any random song at all, not something from his repertoire, just any song. And I'd have to join in. And he'd try about 4 or 5 songs, and I'd join in. And then he'd get to one that I'd probably never heard of, and I'd start fumbling about trying to join in, and he'd turn around and he'd go, "Got you."
Really?
And then carry on with his act. It was just a bit of a game between us.
But that always got a laugh with the audience. I'd seen him do that a few times, and it always got a laugh when he, try and wake the band.
Yeah, I only fell asleep once.
You did fall asleep once?
Yes.
Can you tell us that story?
It's not too long ago. But it was the last spot. It must have been about 11:45 at night when the show had started at 7:30, and I suddenly was aware that I'd woken up, and I was aware of 2 things that were happening. The drummer, who sat next to me, who was well aware that I was asleep and should be awake, ready to do the next cue, was sniggering because he knew what was coming.
Kenny Adams.
Yeah, my good friend.
Bless him.
And Ken turned round and looking at me, and he said, "Well, are you going to play or what?"
Did he know you'd been asleep?
You could tell, yes, absolutely.
You tell you were just putting your pyjamas on.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. And it can't be, as I say, it can't be easy to sit there that whole time to be, taking that in.
But this was during the second time that I actually worked full-time with Ken,
which
is more recently.
Yes. There was a time when you cut 20 minutes out of Ken's show, and it may have been for that reason you just needed to get to bed. Can you explain that story?
Well, Ken would occasionally turn round and sort of say to the band, what comes next? Half jokingly. And I thought I'd be clever and get a bit of time off the night, and so I actually missed 20 minutes of material out and gave him the wrong cue further on into the show. So Ken said, "Are you sure about that?" And I went, yeah. So he carried on from where I'd said we'd got to.
Brilliant.
Slow forward about 4 hours, and it's coming up to 12 o'clock. Ken's doing his last spot, and all of a sudden he put in the exact 20 minutes I'd missed out, turned around and looked at me as if to say, "You thought you had me there."
That's amazing how he knew that. And
Well,
he
the
kept
little
you going
chuckle.
all through his life thinking you got away with it.
Yeah.
He's a very clever man, isn't
Very, 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 yeah.
Very
It
talented.
was lovely to work with, yeah.
Clever man. That's lovely to hear. I always enjoyed working with him. He made everyone so welcome that was in his family, I guess. He did make you feel part of the family.
Yeah.
And as Anne did, you know.
Well, we used to love going on the jobs with Ken and the support acts. It was, as you say, like a family travelling around, and we'd have some good times.
And I feel slightly foolish asking you this, but your name is?
Ken Dodd.
Your chosen charity?
Parkinson's.
And your chosen subject?
Comedians who performed in variety.
In 90 seconds, starting now. Which comedy partnership had their first television series in 1954? They'd made their name in variety theatre and radio and had performed together as a double act since the age of 15.
Morecambe and Wise.
Yes. What completed the comedian Ken Platt's trademark catchphrase, "I won't take my coat off"?
I'm not stopping.
Yeah, one of Tommy Cooper's infamous gags was the way he often tipped taxi drivers. What would he slip into the driver's top pocket with the invitation, "Have a drink on me"?
They say it's a tea bag.
Yes, which comedian made an early public appearance as a choir boy at the consecration of the Lady Chapel of Liverpool Anglican Cathedral?
Arthur Askey.
Yes. What was the comedian Sandy Powell's catchphrase from his days on the radio?
Can you hear me, Mother?
Yes. Which comedian played the talkative short one alongside her tall friend Cynthia? She'd include some of the catchphrases, such as, "She knows you know."
Hilda Baker.
Yes. Frank Randall was noted for playing lecherous drunks. Which of his personal items was he known to throw at hecklers in the audience?
Probably a beer bottle or a pint glass.
It was his false teeth.
Oh.
Les Dawson came to public attention on opportunity knocks with lines such as, "Tonight I would like to play something by Chopin, but I won't because..."
He never plays any of mine.
Yes. Which comedian who had been a professional musician in his native Austria played the violin as part of his act? He was also the very first castaway on Desert Island Discs.
Vic Oliver?
Yes. Of which football club was the comedian Tommy Trinder the chairman?
Fulham.
Fulham Football Club is correct. Ken, you had no passes. You got 9 points. 5. Now, look, let me ask you what is probably an impossible question.
I never lend money to people.
I'll try another one in that case. What makes a joke funny?
A joke is like a little one-act play. They contain different. They contain emotion. Sometimes it's just wordplay, puns. You can get buttered puns. You can get shredded wit. Sorry about that. A joke can be a story with an end to it, but then you get another kind of joke, which I don't want to get anybody excited. They're called quickies. I can't tell you that one. No.
Look, you're not in the first flush of youth. I mean, you're...
The first what?
Yes, you're good. You're in your 80s.
Oh, that kind of a flush, yes.
You're in your 80s. You've got shows booked until the middle of next year.
Yes, true.
Are you just going to keep going on and on?
Yes.
Welcome back to Eyes and Teeth to talk about his moments with Ken Dodd, Sir Ken Dodd, comedian Don Reed.
I wrote for many years getting Doddy his knighthood. And
did you start that? Because I know that someone started a petition, and I'm sure it came from you, Don. I remember signing something online, and it happened in the end. So you probably are responsible for getting Doddy his knighthood.
I've got that many things that I'm copying off and putting on Facebook. That's it, yeah.
The town hall, yeah.
Now, if you can see the bottom corner there, what it says, the Freeman of Liverpool, resident Freeman of the city, Mr. Kendall. I wrote about that as well.
Wow.
And I said he won't drive his sheep across the bridge, and I said he purports to be the mayor of Knotty Ash and all of that. And that was a luncheon that they put on, the comedian's luncheon, when Doddy had got his 2006, I think it was. And we wrote about that for Doddy getting his knighthood.
Oh,
And I
amazing.
wrote to Mr. Cameron became the leader of the Labour Party, the Conservative Party.
Yes.
And he said, I agree with you. This man, I will look into this. Then he became Prime Minister, and he didn't reply to any letters after that.
Well, whatever happened, Don, it did happen in the end, and we were all very proud. Eyes and Teeth. As a support act myself, I remember seeing Amethyst or Danny and Steph in Liverpool Cathedral that day of bittersweet happiness, saying farewell to the King of Butty Minds. Welcome to Eyes and Teeth to talk about his encounters with Ken, Danny Hunt. So not only is Danny and Stephanie illusionists, but they've supported Ken Dodd. Also, they become VIPs in the magic community, from sideshow stunts, science and magic, TV consultants, mentalism, escapology, everything. They do everything. And it was very difficult to track Danny down. I've got him on the phone now, and he's in a hotel ready to do another gig. So, Danny, while I've got you, welcome to Eyes and Teeth.
Thank you for having us, Steve. It's very, very pleasant. It's lovely to be here.
Lovely to speak to you, mate. And I know how busy you are. So I think last time I saw you, I was babysitting Rex backstage in the.
That was awesome. Yeah, we were doing I think a magic convention, weren't we? And of course, our little baby, he tours with us, and he sat with you backstage. It was awesome. It was great.
Before then, I saw you at Sir Ken Dodd's big service at Liverpool Cathedral, and I turned round and I saw you and Steph there, and I thought, I think most of Ken's support acts must be here today, and everyone that loved him and cared about him. Well, I know we all miss him dearly, but those early days with you touring, how long did you do with Ken? Where did you first meet?
Many years ago, I went to see Ken when I think it was about 9 or 10, and I went to the Futurist in Scarborough.
Wow.
I saw Ken there. And I remember afterwards, always wanted to do magic. Anything to do with show business. I loved it. Yeah. And I wrote a letter to Ken when I was about 10 or 11, maybe not even that. And I wrote this letter to Ken after I'd seen him at the Futurist. And I sent a little newspaper cutting of me in the newspaper doing some magic with my sister.
Nice.
And said I'd seen him at the Futurist, how much I'd loved it. And I sent that off to Ken. And in the letter it said how much I enjoyed the show. And it was Paul Derrick. I don't know if you remember Paul, who was a wonderful act.
I do, yes.
He was support act for Ken that night. He was producing all of these, chickens and owls and doves. It was just, I loved it. I think Paul was one of the first magicians I ever saw live as well. Anyway, I wrote this letter saying how much I'd loved the show and sent it off to Ken. And it said in the letter that I'd love to be a magician, and one day I'd love to work with him. With my picture and all the rest of it. And years later, I met Ken at a magic convention, at Blackpool Magic Convention, where a magician called Peter Diamond introduced me to him properly. So it was the first time meeting him. I was about maybe 14 at that point.
Oh, wow.
Fast forward, I ended up at the Blackpool Magic Convention. Ken saw me perform there, the opening of their new club room, and he asked me if I'd come and work with him. And a week later, I was out doing shows with him. Fast forward even further on, and I remember chatting to Ken maybe 2-3 years ago. I did just over 10 years working with Ken. I was chatting to him about some stuff, and we always talked about magicians. And he gave me a poster, an old magician's poster and a program. And I remember saying to him that I sent you a letter. And he was chatting a little bit more, and weeks went by, and he turned up, and he called me into his dressing room, and he still had the letter. He had the letter with the photograph.
Wow.
So it must have taken him ages to find it, because I would imagine he'd had all sorts of things.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. There it was. There's my letter. As a little kid sending it off to Ken Dodd. And
mate, that's beautiful.
It was incredible.
Isn't that so nice? He probably threw mine away. I first met him when I was 14 as well. He was so good to me backstage at the stage door, and he said, "Listen, you're a budding young ventriloquist. Keep writing to me. Stay in touch, and when you're ready, you'll come and tour with me." And I know that happened about 14, 15 years later, but he asked me to send a tape of me because I had a TV show coming up when I was like 15 years old, and he said, send me the tape. And I did. I kept in touch, and he kept his word with me as well, and he did the same with you.
It was an incredible man. And like you said, a lot of us, I personally miss him every single day. Every time I walk out on stage, I've got you. It's not you must be the same. You've got words of wisdom from Doddy in your ear, haven't you?
Yes.
You've got all those years of what he, that experience. And someone once said to me, do you not get fed up of watching him do this? Because we used to stay as long as we could. Some nights we had to dash off, but most of the time we'd stay right until the end. And people would say, do you not get fed up of watching him do the same stuff over and over again? And I said, we're not watching him do the same stuff. It was, but it wasn't. It was something different. And oh my goodness, if anyone had ever sat in those wings as you did, and you watch Ken do what he did.
Yeah, it wasn't just watching an act, was it? It was
it was incredible. Every last detail was thought through. Everything he did. That was just. I think for people like yourself and me and anyone else who got to support him, we had something rather special. We saw something rather special.
Yeah.
Being able to stand in those wings and watch that, I think.
Definitely. We never took that for granted, did we? I always thought, and I would have done it for free, and I know he would have loved that, but he did. He got my fee down, but I would have done it for free because we need petrol to get to the gigs, and they were nowhere near each other. But I mean, we would have, wouldn't we? We would have just done it because it was Ken Dodd.
Yeah, and it was 10 years of doing this stuff with him, and I genuinely, we drove from one end of the country to the other, and Ken would always say to me, or Anne would always say to me, it's not too far, is it? It was never too far, Steve.
No.
Too far. We'd have just done it. It didn't matter where it was, when it was. We were going to do those gigs because we loved it.
Oh, it was worth it, wasn't it? What a great memory we've got as well. That's amazing. You talk about inspirations, sort of words and wisdom and things. Did Ken never give you any ideas or inspiration?
The best moments for me were when I was on stage. I can always remember, I'd always look off to the wing and I'd see, we'd go on open in the second half, usually open in the second half.
Yes.
And you'd look to the wings and you'd see Ken stood there. And you'll have the same sort of memory, I'm sure, in the long...
the red coat.
The red coat, tickling sticks in one hand and a cup of tea and a Union Jack mug in the other side, in the other hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I always remember I'd come off and he'd just touch you on the arm or he'd say something to you and he'd always go, no, young man, I've got some notes for you later. and always go to the dressing room and you'd be there for hours, you'd be there for ages. And then you got notes, you got ideas, you got, it was everything he had to say. And he always used to say to me, just try it. I did most of it. He always used to say, I think you could be a funny act. I think you could be a comedian. I'm like, no, I couldn't. And he always used to say, let me, I'll write you an act and I'll put it together. And I used to always say, I don't know if I could. I don't know if I'm not funny. I don't ever think I'm funny. And then, having said that, years later, we're doing a little tour at the minute, which is a science and magic show. And we had some friends come to watch the show the other week. A guy called Andy Nyman, who's a wonderful actor and director. He directs and produces stuff for Darren Brown and so on.
Yeah, Andy's brilliant. Yeah, I love his work.
He's super. Andy just turned around to me and he said, oh my God, he said, watching you do your show, he said, it was like I could hear Doddy in so much of what you were saying. And I guess it just rubs off, Steve. There's stuff there. When you spend so long with someone, there's things that, and obviously the notes that he'd given and the advice he'd given, it almost just kind of must stay there. It must just kind of pop into your mind.
It becomes natural, doesn't it? And I think we are sponges, aren't we? We're sponges for the people we learn from. And it's amazing to have those experiences with the greats.
And don't forget with Ken as well, he was always encouraging us something new and something different. So we did our illusion show with him, and he always used to say, 12 minutes, young man, no more, no less, 12 minutes.
Yes.
No more, no less. Obviously, that was great. So we were always perfect to time. Never spoke in the illusion act. It was always done to music.
Of course.
And he came to me one day and he said, now, I want you to do a second set for me. And I went, right. And I guess he was thinking, if we do a second set, it saves him another expense and another support act, I guess. But
Clever man.
We did. We put another acting in, but he didn't want an illusion spot. He absolutely loved mentalism and mind reading.
Okay.
We put a separate act together, which was all mentalism stuff for him, and he said, "Oh, you've got to use windmills of your mind as your play on music," and he had Nigel and Kenny play us on and off with windmills of your mind.
Oh, bless him. Yeah.
All this mind reading stuff. And it was brilliant. And again, it kind of pushed me to do something different. So we ended up with from that 12 minutes, that additional 12 minutes we did with Ken, turned into another 45-minute long show, which was incredible.
That's fantastic. So, I mean, you still really have got Ken with you on stage because you're still doing those shows and those routines.
Massively. And like I said, miss him every single day, and every time you walk out on stage, you've got those memories, the memories of the stuff you put together with him, the memories of the stuff that he would comment on and he would talk about, so... And Steph the same. Steph always said it to me. Steph always says, wow, we were really lucky. We are really lucky to work with such a great man in the world of entertainment. He was, an absolute legend. And to be able to pick up to have that knowledge, or to gain the knowledge that he's passing on to you was incredible. That was so much
truly wonderful. Now, I'm going to be seeing you in Blackpool 2025 at the Magic Convention, which I can't wait. I'll come and see you at your stall. But there's a Ken Dodd Award at Blackpool, isn't there?
Yes, there is. Yeah, the Ken Dodd Award. There's been some incredible magicians have been awarded it. I think the idea was it was meant to be a comedy award, but
okay.
I think some of the time it went to just acts that Ken enjoyed. I think a lot of the time, which was nice.
That's a nice sort of tribute to him as well.
Yeah. I remember just before he died, he obviously couldn't make that convention, and he was chatting to me about who we thought should win the prize that year. And it was a guy called the Amazing Kaplan who ended up with the prize, and it was nice to chat with Ken, because as I say, he wasn't well and wasn't getting around much, but it was nice to chat to him about acts that he enjoyed. Yeah, it was super. So,
that's amazing. Well, I know he enjoyed you because he talked about you when I toured with him. So it's so nice that we could all sort of get together. And I saw you on that day. It was a magical day at his service, wasn't it? It was just
incredible thing to see as well, Stephen.
Yes.
Very sad. Everyone's obviously really really sad, but incredible to witness and be there and be part of. And some great memories. Listening to people like John Fisher talk about Ken, and just wonderful, absolutely wonderful to hear those lovely words, that were said.
Oh, it was perfect. It's a beautiful segue. John Fisher's coming on next after you, so that's a lovely segue.
I have a photograph, Steve. I have a photograph. I absolutely love this photograph, and it's me stood with, in my opinion, my two heroes. And that's, of course, one Ken and the other's John. Dressing room, and it was wonderful. And again, incredible to stand in the dressing room and listen to John Fisher, to Ken talk about the industry and entertainment and so on and so on. Because I don't know if you know, John Fisher is a huge Magic fan as well.
It's huge. I mean, his last book, Heroes of Comedy. I mean, I haven't got it yet. I can't wait to get it, but it looks like another beautiful book from John.
Definitely. Again, and a wonderful, wonderful magic mind and magic knowledge. But again, like I say, when you have both, I could have sat in that dressing room for hours, for days, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Listening to those two greats of entertainment chatting to each other. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful, Steve.
Oh, the history of both their minds. Yeah, I love them both to bits. Danny, pass my love to Stephanie and Rex. Thank you so much for today.
Love, Steve. Take care.
Many thanks to Danny for his memories. So many tweeted their thoughts the day we lost Sir Ken, 12th of March 2018. John Bishop said, true comedy legend. Rest in peace, Sir Ken Dodd. Anton Deck, so sad to hear of the passing of Ken Dodd, a comedy legend. Dara O'Brien, Ken Dodd has died. So happy I got to meet him once, and more importantly, saw him do one of his incredible 5-hour shows. He was an education to watch. Afterwards, at 1:30 a.m, he had beers with me in his dressing room and talked showbiz, a privilege and a loss. Sir Paul McCartney said, farewell to my fellow Liverpudlian, the tatty-hilarious Ken Dodd, beloved by many in Britain and a great champion of his home city and comedy. We met him on a few occasions as the Beatles and always ended up in tears of laughter. Today is tears of sadness as well. See you, Doddy. David Walliams. A face made for comedy. Comedy flowed through him like water. Sandy Toksvig. Best dinner guest I ever sat next to. I don't think I said a word. Just laughed and tried not to drown in my own soup. Thank you for the genius. And Brian Conley. Thanks for all the chats and guidance. You always had time for everyone. Dear Doddy, tatty bye. The messages kept on coming, which is always comforting to know he touched millions of lives and had fans from all kinds of show business and television. It's now time for something real special. I'm excited to have him as part of Eyes and Teeth. He's been an inspiration for many years. Welcome to the specials. Talking Sir Ken Dodd, Mr. John Fisher. Eyes and Teeth. Sir Ken Dodd, not only was Sir Ken a scientist of comedy and variety, but he gave way to young variety stars. He gave them, as he did me, included a platform for us, and the opportunity to work sold-out theatres, which I've not seen since. But working with Sir Ken Dodd meant a lot. For me to be working on the stage and to look in the wings out the corner of my eye and see Ken Dodd watching me work was a memory I'll never forget. It's a passion for me to keep talking about Ken Dodd and the wonderful work that Lady Anne is doing for Ken, the museums, the tributes and everything. I think is wonderful. It's so nice. He'll never be forgotten by so many people. But Sir Ken Dodd, John Fisher, what did he mean to you?
Sir Ken Dodd means more to me at a personal level than any other of the great pros, and I owe an awful lot to so many of them and was so fortunate because of the path my career took to be able to count so many of them as genuine friends. I've never laughed as much as the time I first saw Ken Dodd perform. I was in my late teens, early 20s. It was the mid-1960s. It was at the London Palladium, his first time there. And I'd heard him on radio. I'd seen the odd thing on television. Perhaps hadn't latched on to what it was about. Then, hey presto, he's top of the bill at the greatest theatre in the land. And deservedly so. I've never heard laughter like it. Except on other occasions when I've gone back. But you get used to it yourself. And you came away, and I can say this for my parents who were with me on the occasion. My sister was with us, physically aching. It was almost too much. You wonder how...
Not too long.
Not too long. Well, he had to fit in 2 performances in those days, so he had to keep it tighter than he eventually let it spread. And this man had completely hypnotized me. Of course, I was interested in comedy, all the great comedians of the time, and I was beginning to put together the idea, one day maybe I could write about this, maybe I should research a few of those whom I never saw because I wasn't born in time, people like Sid Field, Max Miller, Rob Wilson, I'd heard on the radio, saw Max on television once, wanted to find out more, and within 2 or 3 years I'm at college in Oxford, and who should come into the new theatre in Oxford where you're going tonight but Ken Dodd, with the after-season run of the big show he would do every other year at the Blackpool Opera House.
Wow.
It was Ken Dodd and great specials. Fred Roby was there on this occasion, and Sylvan, the Italian magician, and the Bluebell Girls, and they brought the whole thing down for 3 weeks. And this was about October. And it was the time of Beatlemania. But what was incredible was the crowds outside the theatre in Oxford. The police had to control them. And you think, is this a fifth Beatle? And so went to see the show, and I thought to myself, I'd love to meet this man. So I wrote him a letter and said, "Dear Mr. Dodd, I know you're very busy." I explained who I was. I explained my passion for comedy and variety. I explained the fact that I dabbled myself in magic. Would it be possible to see him if he had 10 minutes to spare, just to meet him? And by return, there was a note: "Announce yourself at the stage door. Come along any night. Be lovely to see you. Doesn't matter what time." So I plucked up the courage to do that. I sit there, young man. Now, I want to find out what why you're interested in all this. But you've got to excuse me because I've got a show to do. Help yourself to a lager in the shower. The shower was piled high with lager. And it was just wonderful because he said, you talk about something, about writing about these people. If you're really interested in that, you should do it. And he, more than anybody, triggered. And I was still at college, and I had the resources of one of the biggest libraries in the land at the Ashmolean. And they had back issues of all the old newspapers, the stage in the era.
Wow, yeah.
I'm sure you can get it all online now.
Yes.
But I used to go and I used to do my studies seriously in the daytime, in the morning, and then in the afternoon I'd order up from the stacks these huge bound volumes like the stage, and they were so heavy, and I going back, and the great thing about those newspapers was that every Monday, well, there would be a review that would go in the next issue of every variety show in the land. So you could follow the acts, and you described all the sketches Will Hay performed. You had to do a bit of detective work putting things together.
Yes.
And you began to get a sense of not only who these people were by looking at them or by hearing them, but because there weren't videos back then or tapes, a few films maybe you could dip into, of the odd person like Formby, Max Miller. You get a sense of what they really did and the impact they made in society and how big a star they were, and kept in touch with Ken. A couple of years later, I apply for a post at the BBC, traineeship, and I get up find myself starting work in Manchester, BBC Manchester, and I was assigned to a producer called Stan Parkinson, no relation, and he was responsible for producing children's entertainment shows. And I found myself working on a series with Ray Allen, teaching Quackers.
Oh, okay.
I hadn't told you about that.
No.
And another series I did called Score with the Scaffold, which was a quiz show that was hosted by the Scaffold pop group. That was Roger McGough, Mike McGear, brother of Paul McCartney, and John Gormley. And Stan, at that time, the very day I joined him in the office, so it was my first time at the BBC, first working day, he said, you don't need to worry about this, but I've currently got a show in studio this week. Come down and have a look. And it was Ken Dodd and the Diddy Men.
No.
And Ken Dodd, hello, young man. And he remembered people. He cared for people.
Yes.
And he remembered your names. And that became a sort of motif in my life and career. And Stan, I remember, had to have another meeting with him for the next series, and Ken was appearing in Coventry. He said, you should come down just for the ride. And then I find myself, that was 2 years in Manchester. Then I found myself coming down to to London, and eventually being connected to the Parkinson show. And of course Doddy does that, and we're picking up from where we left off, and I was one of the few people, because when I was doing the research for that show, we gave Ken a complete show of his own. I realised later how honoured I was, because I was invited to the house. I was kept waiting 45 minutes, but his dad answered the door.
Really?
I said, go in the front room. And it was the piano, grand piano, with all the pictures of Doddy with the Queen and Doddy with the Prime Minister and Doddy with Frank Sinatra or whatever, you know. And I was kept waiting, and then very flustered, oh, sorry young man, and we're picking up again. And he was so grateful for that show, because it was a colossal show he did. Well, he obviously came back onto Parkinson before the series ended, and then I moved to Thames Television, and at Thames Television he's doing a guest spot on the Des O'Connor show. And then I'm getting a call from his press agent and said, look, we're putting together a group of people who know Ken. Would you act as a character witness at the trial? I said, of course, without thinking. But I knew subliminally, I knew in my... So this man was not an evil man, this was not a criminal, this was Ken Dodd, and he was a little eccentric. And so I found myself going up to Liverpool. On that flight were Eric Sykes and Roy Hudd.
Wow.
And we all gave character witness on that day.
Oh, okay.
Didn't actually see Ken then, but I've got a very tearful memory of how terrible he looked, slumped in the box.
That's horrible to see.
And then, of course, you know, he was rightly acquitted, and he was back at the Palladium with a vengeance. And to promote the show, we did a This Is Your Life with him, and he didn't know about it, but Dave Forrester and his agent, and Billy Marsh,
yes,
the greatest variety agent
great
of all,
names, yes,
said, if we could get Ken, he can't turn this down, because he'd always refused it up to then.
Did he really?
When I say he'd refused it, managers would, like Miff Ferry, had an understanding with Tommy, or Tommy had an understanding with Miff, that never ever do I do This Is Your Life. And Ken had a similar arrangement. So we were taking a gamble. Mm-hmm. And in the foyer of the Palladium, where Ken had come for some photo call, who comes round the corner but Michael Aspel? And then I'm there, and then Billy Marsh is there. By Jove, young man. And so we did the This Is Your Life, and then I had an idea, because I thought, why isn't somebody filming this for television? So I was able to put together Ken Dodd at the London Palladium as a Christmas special for Thames. That was just wonderful.
Did he forgive you for the This Is Your Life thing?
Oh, yes.
He enjoyed it, didn't he?
Yes.
It was amazing.
Just seeing him with our daughters. And earlier I'd done a series and a special with him at the BBC on the strength of the Parkinson shows. He never realised how good he was. He never realised there was always an insecurity there. And I remember having to talk him into doing a series. I said, look, I don't want any of the sketches that you used to do. I just wanted you doing yourself what you do best. To stand up, obviously a token song. I will put some guests with you whom you really want to work with. Who would you like to work with? George Carl. Got him George Carl. I'd love to do a show with Arthur Asking.
Wow.
To meet our pals in show business, and tonight I'm meeting a chappie I'd like to introduce now to my idol. Ladies and gentlemen, one of Britain's greatest comedians, Mr. Arthur Asking.
Careful, I'm a fool.
Wow.
For God's sake, be careful.
Arthur.
Yes. Ken?
Very, very funny man, but you're not just a common comedian, are you? Not just a common.
I'm not common.
No, you.
Am I a comedian?
You've had about 10 careers.
Ken, you said some very nice things when you introduced me then.
Well,
Can I, in all sincerity, say something, and I really mean this, playmates, which is my camera, that one. That one there. No, I mean this in all sincerity, Ken. I've said this on radio, I've said it on telly, I've said it in print, and you, without doubt, are the funniest comedian in this country.
Never.
I really mean it.
You must have worked with hundreds of different acts all over the years and all different balmy people. What was the balmiest act you ever...
No, this was years ago. There was a fella, and he called himself the Great Rudolfo, or something like that. And he was doing no business, playing a very small theatre. But on Friday night, he put up a bill and said, on Friday night, the Great Rudolfo will eat a man alive. So there was no business all week. Friday night, it was packed to the ceiling. Then the Great Rudolfo came out in front of the curtains and said, ladies and gentlemen, and now for my great challenge, a 1,000-pound challenge. I'm going to eat a man alive. Have I a volunteer? Which he didn't expect, but it was a Friday night. There was the usual drunk in, and he went up on the stage. So the Great Rudolfo stuck with him now. So the scene had been set. There was a table with a white tablecloth on, and two of the chorus girls were dressed as nurses, and there was a writing table and a washhand stand. So he said to this fella, now you're doing this at your own risk. You've got to sign this document to say if anything happens to you, it's your own free will and accord. So the fella said, I don't mind, you know. So they took him over to the desk, the two nurses. What time the Great Rudolfo was cleaning his teeth. The washhand stand. Then he put a white overall on, and now they've got this fella lying stripped to the waist on the table. So the Great Rodolfo goes across, the lights go down, the music starts, and he goes to this fella, and he bites him there. Through blood. This fella, whoa, jumped up and disappeared. And the Great Rodolfo said, well, ladies and gentlemen, the volunteer, and now they're starting throwing things. So he disappeared quicker than the fella. And that was the end of the Great Rodolfo.
You're always cracking gags about your height.
That's right.
But there are lots more small. I mean, Georgie Wood. Georgie Wood. Now tell us about him.
Dear old Georgie Wood. Well, you know, he was a bit of an eccentric. He talked more than I do, and that's it. Oh, you. And he became a convert. He changed over to the Catholic faith and was very earnest about it. And he went on a pilgrimage to Rome, and it appears you stand in a long line and you go in one at a time, kiss the ring, you're in about 15 seconds and out again. Well, Georgie goes in, and he's in 15 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. The Swiss guards are all getting worried now. So they open the door just in time to hear the Pope saying, but I assure you, Mr. Wood, I am a Catholic.
I used to listen to you in Bandwagon.
In Bandwagon,
with Norcia Bagwash.
True.
And I have a theory. Norcia Bagwash was really, later, Sabrina, wasn't she?
That's right.
Because she didn't speak.
With a bit more free. That's right. We kept her quiet.
Where's Sabrina now?
Sabrina, well, she had to give up the business.
Why?
She got a throat puncture. She's married, and believe it or not, she's living in Hollywood. Married to a psychiatrist.
Well,
he was going to say feels the bumps.
No. What I was going to say, I was going to drink your health. Young Arthur Askey. Young Arthur Askey.
Cheers.
And I'd like to thank you from myself and from everybody else in Great Britain for being big-hearted Arthur.
Thank you.
For all the happiness you've given us all over the years, Arthur, as the premier jester, there is a beautiful ceramic jester.
Oh, isn't that marvellous? How about that?
We'd also like to say very big thank you.
Others weren't so well known. There was a Swiss clown troupe from the Knee Circus. He said, I love clowns. Macronet, who was France's answer to Tommy Cooper, who was brilliant. Stanley Unwin, who did Double Trouble.
Oh, he has, yeah. Funny.
And he paid me one of the highest compliments. He said, well, he paid me 2 compliments. He said, as a producer, you are like Santa Claus, because whatever I wish for, I get. When we did the thing at the Palladium, we wanted one really top-notch special act on the show, Robbie Gasser and his Sea Lions. And this was an act which we had to bring in from Switzerland. Did you ever see it? He did the balance, a hand balance, on the
Oh no, I've not seen that. Really?
Of the sea lion.
The sea, wow.
And
they're strong animals, aren't they?
And and apart from them, it's a bit like that Detroit chimpanzees, and it was one of the greatest animal action. The interaction between the human performer and the obvious human instincts of the animal. There was no cruelty involved in that.
No. And the goldfish is okay, is it?
Yeah, the goldfish is okay. But anyhow, and he also said to me, he said, all other shows today, he said, they're just parades of egos. He said, your shows are celebrations of talent. And he meant all my shows.
That's a lovely compliment, isn't it?
You know, when I look at some of the chat shows now, anybody, people walking on, and what goes for variety doesn't really exist. You've got stand-up, it's a different area. It's a form of, I don't know, something different, and there are people who respond to it, and there are people, audiences who will, I guess, remember with affection some of them. And I've got a bit of respect for, but even these are veterans now, Lee Evans, and who turns up, I won't tell you the story, at the tea party, Eddie Izzard.
Oh yes,
Wonderful.
He was just walking by, wasn't he?
Yes.
She.
And yeah, they had something there, but the world of variety isn't there for them to practice their skills in the same way.
Well, you guessed it, the Ken Dodd podcast has run over time, and the only time I've ever had to do this because it's overrun. So thank you, Doddy. Please head over to the very last episode. This is now the penultimate episode of Sir Ken Dodd, The Specials. See you soon.